Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. On Fridays, we talk about the product owner role in Scrum. We talk about patterns and anti-patterns that relate to ours and the team's collaboration with the product owner. And we've also put together a course to help you navigate that relationship. There's 18 modules, nearly 8 hours of tools, techniques, videos, handouts, presentations you can use to help you and your team work better with your product owner. The course is available at bit.ly/coach-your-PO. All lowercase, all one word. That's bit.ly/coach-your-PO. And now, on to the show, the Product Owner Show. Hello everybody, welcome to our TGIF Friday and Product Owner episode, this week with Mark Metze. Hi Mark, welcome back.
Hey, thanks a lot Vasco. TGIF.
TGIF indeed. Hope you have one nearby and you can go out for a drink. So let's start with the product owner. And on Fridays, we do talk about the product owner, but we talk about it in a specific way. We'll end the episode describing what a great product owner looks like. So stick around for that. But first, let's go through the anti-pattern. Share with us, Mark, an example of what a really bad, potentially the worst product owner pattern that you've seen in your career.
Yeah, so this is a product owner that I didn't work directly with, but I'm sharing this story from afar. And it's one that I tell my teams and I tell my product owners to try to instill the importance of creating potentially releasable increments at the end of each and every sprint, right? So for this story, I share about a friend that ended up losing their job. And it was after around 9 months that they were working with a team as a product person with developers, that the owners came knocking and they were asking, okay, you've been working on this for 9 months. Let's see what we've invested in. And the team had tried several times to release updates, but there are various reasons, some good, maybe some not so good, on why they weren't able to release any changes. And as you might expect, the owners weren't very pleased. They really were asking, what is the return on the investment that we've made, the capital? This is our money we're investing in this product or this project or this solution. What return are we getting? And the team didn't have anything to show for it. They had a lot of good technical things to share in the background that they had done, but as far as showing something that a user could actually use, they didn't have anything. So my friend who is a product person lost their job over this. And I try to share this with my teams on why this is important. If we're not producing value, not to use it as a scare tactic, but let's be real. This is a business and investors want to see a return on their investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look back and maybe even reflect on this story with your friend, maybe over a beer or two, what were the insights? Like what led the team and the product owner to that kind of situation? Because I'm pretty sure that if you had asked them, they would have told you that, of course, we know we need to deliver value.
Yeah, so I won't get into too many of the ins and outs, but one of the sticking points is they only had one individual that had the knowledge and the ability to push changes into production. And that person was unavailable when the team was ready. So they really had a single point of failure when it came to pushing changes into production. So, you talk about a cross-functional team, and part of one of the aspects of cross-functional is not just developing, not just testing, not just doing UI work or back-end work, is actually having someone that can push those changes into production. And so they had done all this work. If we think about American football, you started out at the 20-yard line and you pushed all the way across the field and you got to maybe the 1 or 2-yard line, and you just can't make it into the end zone because you don't have that kicker or somebody to be able to make it into the end zone. And I'll share with you, Vasco, it really highlights probably my single most favorite principle of the 12, of the Agile Manifesto of the 12 principles. And that's working software, is a primary measure of progress. So, I think, what if the team would have committed to having usable, viable, done increments at the end of every sprint? What would those investors have said if every 2 to 4 weeks they were seeing something that was actually working? Would they have had the same reaction or not?
Yeah, so that definitely in your story, I think that's the valid question. As a Scrum Master, I would ask, what took the Scrum Master so long, or what made them take so long to actually raise that together with the product owner? In fact, I would say, if I were the product owner, hey, the single most important backlog item is release, until the release was possible. Not at the end, because at the end of the 9 months, it's too late, right? I usually say that whatever time you think you need to deliver, cut that in half and deliver then, because that's the only way to make sure you can deliver when you think you wanted to deliver. And of course, that's a recursive rule, which eventually takes you to releasing every day. And the idea that product owners are so far removed from the reality of product development that they forget that actually we need to deliver things, that's definitely a big anti-pattern.
So this will be a self-serving insight, but there wasn't a Scrum Master for this team.
There you go. I told you. All right. Let's move on to the opposite, the mirror image of what we just discussed, and what was perhaps the best product owner you've ever worked with. Describe them for us, Mark.
Yeah, let's end this week on a high note.
Absolutely.
So I want to share a great example of a PO. And previously, we talked about, I think it was on Wednesday, we talked about sprint goals. And, sprint goals sound great in theory, but they don't create themselves. It takes work to create sprint goals, and it takes foresight and thought. And take it from experience, it's never a good idea to walk into sprint planning and spring it on the team and say, hey, team, before we start planning, what's our sprint goal? And hand them a blank sheet of paper. That's a recipe for disaster. So in my experience, you spend the full allotted time just arguing and trying to come up with what exactly the goal should be. And so the product owners that I serve now, they do an excellent job. So what they do is they craft a draft sprint goal and they bring it to sprint planning and present it to the team and say, team, this is a draft. Understand what a draft means. I'm not forcing this on the team, but so that we aren't starting with a blank sheet of paper and don't experience writer's block, here's something to get us thinking. What do you think about this? And that really helps the team, gets the motor going, the oil starts moving through the engine, and the team is able to think much better and much more thoroughly at that point by being able to iterate on a skeleton as opposed to just thin air.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things. The first part is the role that the product owner has in thinking through the options for the goals. Like, what would be the goals that make sense for this team? The other thing is that as they do that, they have to crystallize what they want to accomplish. So it's the product owner's responsibility to decide what's the next accomplishment for us. What do we want to deliver? What problem do we want to solve, etc., etc. And then crystallizing that guarantees that when we get to sprint planning, as you said in this example, we actually know why we're picking the stories. The product owner knows why they're picking those stories. They probably have a very clear understanding of why other stories were not picked, and they can explain why the stories make sense. And I think that just that preparation is going to make the planning much easier. And of course, we know, you from your experience and me from my experience, that Scrum goals are actually incredibly effective at helping make decisions during the sprint and reducing the problems of starting too many things, because that's also the other side effect of not having a goal, is that, everything fits, is on the list, so let's do it, right? So it's a very important aspect. And I really like this preparation approach of crafting a draft sprint goal, because it really helps the product owners to crystallize what they need and what they want.
Absolutely. If I can add one more thing, if we can take it to another level, but before we do, I just want to say a word of appreciation. So there's a writer for Serious Scrum. If our listeners are familiar with that, his name is Martin Dalmijn, and he's from the Netherlands. And he really worked directly with me on being able to use sprint goals and why the team should use sprint goals and how to use sprint goals. It was very useful for me. So I just want to shout out to my friend way across the Atlantic, Martin. But I want to take it to another level. So I had another PO that in the past really went above and beyond and did an awesome job. So what she did is she actually brought multiple sprint goals to the sprint review. And after the team had shown the work that they had accomplished and the goal that they finished in the current sprint, then she would give the stakeholders options to say, okay, now that you've seen this, we could go in the direction of option A, option B, or option C, or we could do something else. If it were left up to you, what would you like to do? And the stakeholders really, really, really appreciated that. And it helped them to maybe shine that light a little bit further in front of them so that they could see a little further on the horizon and see where the direction was going. And so that was a very effective way. And then when the team came forth, they were hearing firsthand from the stakeholders, not only from the product owner, on why this next sprint goal was valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great insight and a great tip for our Scrum Masters to work with their product owners and actually have that discussion in sprint review. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the end. So before we do share with us, where can we find out more about you and the work that you're doing, Mark?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn. If you look up Mark Metze, and I spell my first name with a K, M-A-R-K, and the last name is spelled M-E-T-Z-E. I think I'm the only Mark Metze who's a Scrum Master on LinkedIn. There's maybe a law firm that's the office of Mark Metze. That's not me. But yeah, LinkedIn, I'm sure in the show notes you can include my a link to my LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. All of those will be in the show notes. Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us and for being so generous with your time and your knowledge.
Yeah, I'm a huge, massive fan of the show, Vasco. So it was one of my bucket list items to make it onto your show. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Happy to hear that, Mark. Thank you for being here. One more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast is over, but there's a lot more we have to share. We have developed our own membership site where you find a community of active and engaged Scrum Masters. In this site, you get access to exclusive content and get to interact with us, your podcast hosts, as well as the best Scrum Masters in the world. Join us at scrummastertoolbox.com/podcast and keep this podcast free of advertising. See you next week for one more week full of Scrum Master tips and tricks. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.